Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. I have another Monday quarterback video for you. I'm going to play the entirety of this video without any interruption, and then I'll go back and talk about things that are going on to better explain what's going on and talk about things that I think that were done right and or done wrong. Without further ado, here we go.
With the following critical incident video, the Fresno Police Department is sharing information about an officer-involved shooting that occurred on December 22nd, 2021. Our goal with critical incident videos is to be transparent with our community and share as much information as we're able to when critical incidents such as this one occurs. The following critical incident video provides an overview of the incident and includes body-worn camera footage and 911 recordings. Due to the graphic nature of this video, viewer discretion is advised. At 10:30 p.m., the Fresno Police Department received a 911 call reporting an armed man near Fort Washington Fitness at 9471 North Fort Washington Road. The caller, who identified himself as Ryan, reported that the man was in a white VW wagon displaying a firearm and making threats to shoot. It was learned only after the incident that the 911 caller was 26-year-old Ryan Brooks and that he was making a false report to force a confrontation with officers. Mr. Brooks was actually describing his own vehicle and physical description in the 911 call.
911, state your emergency.
Hey, see you later, Hunter.
Thank you. Hello?
Hi, I'm at Fort Washington Fitness. I'm just leaving there. There's someone driving around saying they're going to start shooting people.
Okay, you have a description of the vehicle or the person?
He was wearing a hood and just like a white wagon.
A white wagon?
Volkswagen, something like that.
Okay, and you license plate info?
I didn't get a plate.
Okay, what color was the hoodie?
I couldn't see it. It's dark.
Was it a dark hoodie or a light hoodie?
If I were to guess, dark.
Okay, and tell me what happened. What was the person doing?
Just driving around, and he was waving a gun out the window. It looked like he said he was gonna start shooting, and I just got out of there.
Okay, what kind of gun was it?
I couldn't tell you.
Was it a handgun, a long gun?
A handgun, I think.
Okay, was it dark?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then what race was he?
White, I believe.
Okay. Did he say it to anybody in particular, or was just kind of saying it openly?
Openly.
And what direction was he going?
He was just doing circles in the parking lot. I didn't know.
Okay. And how long ago did you see him?
A minute. I got out there as soon as I heard him talking.
Okay. And your name?
Brian?
Okay. What's your callback number?
Security cameras captured the VW wagon driven by Mr. Brooks, circling the shopping center parking lot waiting for officers to arrive. While responding to the scene, Officer Number 2 called Mr. Brooks to obtain more information. At this time, it was not known that Mr. Brooks was fabricating his report of a man with a gun. In the phone call with Officer Number 2, Mr. Brooks claimed to have left the scene. Mr. Brooks remained calm, articulate, and gave no indication he was in mental distress.
Did you call the police about somebody with a gun?
Yeah.
Okay, hey, are you still at that location?
No, I walked away.
Is he still there?
As far as I knew when I left.
Okay, where can I meet you?
I'm already well away. Are you sure he's not still there?
I don't know, I'm driving over there right now. That's why I'm trying to see if he's there, but I want to meet with you to talk to you about what happened.
So I'm already on the way to Madera. I guess we can turn around. Oh, is there a place we can meet?
Yeah, I mean, you could come back to Fort Washington by the 41. Did you see a gun?
He was waving something. He said he was going to start shooting. That's the best description I saw. It was small.
You didn't see a gun, though?
My best description, I guess it was. I don't know.
You don't know if it was a gun? How far were you?
About maybe 50 feet or so. Like, he was just driving around yelling. He was looking right at me when I got out there.
Okay, what were you doing over there?
Just going out for a walk.
You were walking over there by Fort Washington?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Was he just yelling it out in particular, or was he trying to tell you, or what was? How did that happen?
I couldn't tell you. I was just in the area, and he drove by and said he was going to start shooting, and I just got out there.
When officers arrived on scene, the white VW wagon driven by Mr. Brooks was still circling the parking lot as seen in the security camera video. Mr. Brooks' car is circled in red. A Fresno police patrol car is circled in blue. Mr. Brooks pulled over in an open dirt lot near the intersection of North Fort Washington Road and North Friant Road. Officer number 1 arrived first, with officer number 2 arriving moments later, pulling up alongside officer number 1. It was still unknown to the officers at this time that the 911 caller and the driver of the VW wagon were the same person, and that the report of a man with a gun was Mr. Brooks' attempt to force a confrontation with officers. As officers made verbal contact, Mr. Brooks exited his car. He kept his hand in his sweatshirt pocket, looked directly at officer number 1, and walked in the direction of officer number 1. Both officers ordered Mr. Brooks to remove his hand from his pocket. Mr. Brooks quickly pulled his hand from his pocket, took a shooting stance, and pointed an object at officer number 1. Both officers discharged their service weapons. The following video begins as officer number 1 arrived, exited his vehicle, and made verbal contact with Mr. Brooks.
Guard, put your hands up! Walk back over here with your hands up now! Put your hands up! Take your hands out of your pocket now! Hands out of your pocket! I'm going to shoot you!
Take your hand out of your pocket.
Take your hand out of pocket! 7-3 got shots fired. Suspect down, shots fired.
The following video begins as officer number 2 arrived moments after officer number 1, parking next to him.
Hands up now! Put your hands up! Take your hands out of your pockets! Take your hands out of your pockets! Boy, unfortunately, he's walking towards us. Take your hand out of your pocket, dude! Shots fired, shots fired.
The following is a portion of the previous video which has been highlighted and magnified. It shows Mr. Brooks rapidly pulling his hand from his pocket and pointing in the direction of officer number 1. The video also shows Mr. Brooks rising from the ground, which was followed by the officers discharging additional rounds.
Boy, unfortunately, he's walking towards us. Take your hand out of your pocket, dude! Shots fired, shots fired.
Officers ensured there were no additional suspects or victims in Mr. Brooks' vehicle and then rendered medical aid until the arrival of paramedics. His injuries were not life-threatening. Officers believed the object Mr. Brooks pointed at them in the darkness was a gun. After the incident, it was learned Mr. Brooks was pointing a toy at them. In a post-incident interview, Mr. Brooks told detectives that he intended to end his life, but he was unable to do so himself. Instead, He made the false 911 report and forced the officers to engage him for that purpose. This concludes our critical incident video of the officer-involved shooting that occurred on December 22nd, 2021. The investigation into this critical incident is ongoing.
All right. So, this is an obvious suicide by police kind of incident. The guy went through this elaborate scheme to make a false report about a guy waving a gun around, made a description match him, and then when the police got there, he baited them into shooting him. So on the way to the call, the officer calls the complainant and talks to him further. I think maybe this could be an indication that because they had only got one call about this. Normally, when something odd is like a person driving around waving the gun out the window, usually that would generate more than one person calling in. So one person making this call seems, I think this indicates that they thought maybe it was a little odd, and he's trying to get in touch with the guy to figure out what was going on, and he's asking him questions. Well, what were you doing? And a lot of times there will be people who they get involved in something with someone else, and then something happens between the two, and they get mad at each other. Maybe a little scuffle or something occurs between them, and then one person will call the police and act like they don't know who they are or anything that's going on, and try to get that person in trouble when they had a little bit more involvement in what was going on, and maybe even done something wrong themselves. So that's kind of what makes me think why this officer called him. Maybe they thought that there was something else going on with this incident. It just wasn't some random dude driving around waving a gun. But no idea for sure. The security camera inside this store looks like maybe possibly a cell phone store. Maybe they sell cell phone parts or something. That's what it looks like is on this display board right here. And then you can see a picture of a phone. So my best guess, this is a cell phone store. But their security camera is in this window, and I would assume that its position was intended to look out the glass to capture people approaching, but they put up these Christmas lights, and it has totally screwed with the camera. And this is just a poor placement of a security camera and poor placement of Christmas lights that has interfered with this camera. And it's not able to capture a whole lot, especially with this bright LED light that's right in front of the camera lens. So, if you got a store or your home and you got security cameras put up, you need to think about the placement of the cameras, how light is going to reflect off glass and go into the lens of the camera. This window right here is not the greatest place on how this camera needs to be positioned. And they should have known this whenever they put the camera in, reviewed the feed. They'd be like, hey, there's a lot of feedback on this. But honestly, they probably only checked it during the day, and there wasn't a whole lot of reflection in the glass during the daytime. Nighttime comes around, now there's a lot more reflection. So if you're going to be checking your cameras for placement and everything, you also need to see what it looks like at nighttime, because when light changes, From daytime to nighttime, it makes a big change, especially with glass surfaces. You get a lot of reflections. So be mindful of camera placements, and also be mindful of, Christmas lights that you put near them, because it just obstructs the view, and then the Christmas light gets within the focus of the lens, and can screw with it.
Now. Walk back over here with your hands up now.
So this is a Axon Flex. The Axon Flex, a little cord comes out of the camera recording device itself. Well, I don't know if you call it a camera at that point. The device where audio and video is stored to. There's a wire that comes out of it and it attaches to a camera lens that has a microphone on it as well. And you can clip that little bullet camera basically to like your shoulder epaulette. It can also attach to a pair of glasses that you can wear on your head. And it's supposed to kind of give a more of a point of view kind of angle. I found that they don't really provide the greatest point of view, especially when they're attached to the shoulder epaulette. Usually a person's face is usually in the way. I see a lot of cheeks and jaws kind of obscuring views. Sometimes, depending on, the person's uniform, how used it is, what size it is, and the placement of the camera. Sometimes the camera dips forward and it's just more or less pointed down at the ground, doesn't really provide a lot of great coverage. I think that the camera that attaches to the glasses is probably the best kind of view, but unless you wear glasses and you can have that camera attached to it all the time, then it's kind of a cumbersome thing. And then if you don't wear glasses, well, what are you going to do? Wear fake glasses just to have this camera on there? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But that is what I've seen that generates the best view, is when that camera is attached to glasses, so the camera's on the head. Whenever it's attached to the shoulders, it's pretty much garbage. It doesn't capture shit very well at all. Case in point right here, we don't really get to see much.
Put your hands up! Take your hands out of your pocket now! Hands out of your pocket! I'm going to shoot you! Take your hand out of your pocket. Take your hand out of pocket. 7-3 got shots fired. Suspect down. Shots fired.
The following video begins.
Put your hands up! Take your hands out of your pockets! Take your hands out of your pockets! Boy, unfortunately. Shots fired. Shots fired.
Now, for him, since he has his flex camera on his left shoulder, it provides a better view.
The following is a portion of the previous video from his pocket into the ground, which...
Take your hand out of your pocket, dude.
I mean, you can't tell that this guy does or does not have a gun. He takes a classic shooting stance, or a resemblance of a shooting stance. It looks kind of like a Weaver stance. I mean, it looks like any normal person that goes to a shooting range. Like, he has the posture of holding a gun. Now, they fire, he goes down, he starts to get back up. So, obviously we find out he doesn't have a real gun. But, If he did have a real gun and he's trying to get up, he could be trying to get back up to continue the fight and bring it to the officers. Whether he's trying to get back to his feet and go towards the officers, or if he's just trying to get rolled around into more of a seated position and be able to get a gun, point at these officers and fire. There's no way of knowing. This guy, he wanted this to happen. Obviously, he set this up this way. But let's, hypothetically, let's say this guy, this was not what it is, and he was armed with a real gun. He was trying to harm police. You can't, in that moment right there, think or hope that, oh, this guy, he's just going to sit on his butt and raise his hands and give up. There's no way of knowing if that person's going to do that, because they could very easily roll over onto their butt into a seated position, bring the gun up, and start shooting. And that's an action versus reaction. Generally, action beats reaction, and you don't want to afford a person the opportunity to get the jump on you like that. So I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with this officer continuing to deliver deadly force against this guy as he's trying to get back up off the ground. He has perceived this guy to pull a gun out and try to murder them, and he is defending himself. He has to assume that this guy is a committed attacker and is just trying to get back up to continue the fight against them. So no problem whatsoever with him continuing to deliver deadly physical force.
Shots fired, shots fired.
Officers ensured they
Now let's go back and watch that.
were rising and pointed.
Pocket, dude. Shots fired, shots fired.
So I think he fired maybe 15, 16 rounds. His partner over there, I'm not sure, maybe 7 or 8 rounds. And this guy lived. Like, he did not die. So that tells me that they missed. They missed a lot. Or they just happened to hit him in some very non-critical areas. And he was lucky. I say most of their rounds probably missed. I'd say some obviously hit him because he was injured, but they didn't get anywhere near vital organs to cause him to die. So this is a common thing within self-defense shootings is there are missed rounds, and it's not an excuse trying to say that it's okay, but this is an explanation into why this occurs, why this happens. When you first initially learn how to handle a firearm and get your firearms training and marksmanship, you do it on a flat range. During the day, and normally, ideally during golf course-like conditions. You're shooting at a paper target, and that paper target is stationary, it's not moving, and you are not moving. And you are in a cool, calm, collective state, and there is no threat to your life whatsoever. When you do that type of training, that type of training does have a need to learn some of the fundamentals of firearms handling, and learn some skills and tactics, but it's not the end-all be-all of firearms training. You have to interject some force-on-force training into there. Get things moving, get the targets moving, get the student moving, and get their heart moving faster, get their adrenaline pumping through their body, trying to replicate it as close as possible to a real-life scenario. Henceforth, why it's called reality-based training. Each agency out there is a little bit different in how they do their training. Each state varies to some degree. There there's a lot of similarities in between the states and how their police academies teach and whatnot. They do have standards, and a lot of them will mirror each other or will transfer to one another. But there is some varying degrees in how those are done. Even if you do have two states that have kind of the same standards, their instructors that they have teaching may be way different. And there are some instructors who don't need to be instructing at all. They don't need to be teaching, but they are, and they're in that position, and they may not be delivering the curriculum to the best of way it needs to be done, and that can be some explanation into why maybe some people aren't as good as others. And obviously, I don't know if that's the case here or not, but just speaking broadly, that can be some explanations into misses and stuff like that. That's one part of it. The other part is once these officers get back to their agencies, the agencies vary within just one state. An agency can vary from one part of the state from the other by a lot. And basically it's based off their budgets, and some agencies are able to do more firearms training than others. Agencies at a bare minimum may have to do a firearms qualification once a year, and that may be what some agencies do almost at bare minimum. They do a qualification once a year. Other agencies may do it 4 times a year, even though they don't have to. And if they're doing that, that's great. But qualification is not the same as actual training or practice. And I'll say that again. Firearms qualification is not the same as training and or practice. Should never be considered training. When it comes to training, when an officer gets hired, they go through the academy. The academy has a block of instruction for firearms training, and that's probably for a lot of officers the only real good firearms training they're ever going to have in their entire career, unless they pay out of pocket to go to a commercial school or their agency actually sends them to some more courses. Once they get back to their agency, they'll do their qualifications once, twice, 3, 4 times a year, whatever. And then they may have some additional in-service training where they get some extra hands-on with firearms training that's a little bit beyond qualification kind of stuff, but is not as intensive as what they would have went through the academy, and that can be a pretty good refresher. And force on force. So also at the academy, they should do some force on force drills, and when they get back to their agency, some agencies can afford to have the simunition guns and have the marking cartridges to be able to do drills with and train with and get people more up to speed on stuff. Other agencies won't have that because they're piss poor. They just cannot afford it. I don't think that a lot of people fully understand how poor some agencies are out there, and that they cannot afford to do a whole lot. You also need to think about individual officers. So not every officer is a gun person. There are a multitude of officers out there who were never gun people before they became the police, and after they came to the police, they're still not gun people. There's people who never touched a gun until they got hired by the police. And some of those people, if it were not for their employer saying they had to carry a gun as a condition of their employment, then they probably would not carry it at all. Like, I have no doubt in my mind that there are some police officers in this country who, if you gave them the choice to go to work without wearing a gun, I guarantee you there'd be some who'd be like, yeah, I don't want to carry that thing. Hands down, I have no doubt about it. You'd be surprised about how many messed up people there are that become police officers. And I'm not even talking about what most of the mainstream media is talking about. Mainstream media is talking about these overzealous officers and, excessive force and blah, blah, blah. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about officers who just fail to do their job, who are not supposed to be in that line of work, but somehow they get it in there. That's what I'm talking about. There are some out there like that. And you'd be surprised. You'd be really surprised about how many there are that exist like that. But anyway, going down the rant. So those are kind of some explanations on why there are misses during gunfights. Oh, also the pistol. I mean, you're dealing with a short barrel gun, and there's only 2 points of contact on that gun. So when you take a rifle and compare it to a pistol, your barrel's 4 or 5 inches long, something like that, and you got 2 points of contact. A rifle is going to have 16 inches, 20 inches of barrel length or something like that. And there's going to be 4 points of contact on that weapon. And so it's going to be more accurate. With a pistol, the little amount of movement that you interject into that gun can cause a large miss. So if you ever held a training gun that maybe had a laser on it or something like that, or if you ever held a gun that had a laser on it, and you were, you pointed it and had it aimed at the wall, or had it pointed at a distance and just playing with it, and you noticed that the little amount of movement that you made caused that laser to move a lot downrange, then you can kind of get the idea of how easy it could be for a person using a pistol to miss. That short barrel just doesn't help it a whole lot, and especially when you only got 2 points of contact on there, and in the moment when you have the huge adrenaline dump, a person who is in legitimate fear of their life. If you've ever been in a fight, if you've ever been in a car wreck, if you've ever been to a haunted house and truly had the fucking shit scared out of you, and you had that fight or flight stimulus response, and you had the huge adrenaline dump, you're going to know what I'm talking about. You were jittery as shit, you're moving, you're just not, like, if you went through a haunted house and had the shit scared out of you, and then you tried to get on that game called Operation, little dude with little bone in his leg and the rib cage. You had the little tweezers, and you got to reach down there and try and grab it without hitting the metal edge and making his nose go off. If you try to go through a haunted house and truly got scared and try to play that game, you're going to have some difficulty successfully playing that game without making the buzzer go off and making his little nose light up. You're not going to be very precise with what you're doing, and same thing applies here with the guns, but it magnifies it when the fact that the gun has a short barrel on it, only 2 points of contact, and you're moving and the target's moving. So those are some explanations on why there are misses. It's not, like I said, an excuse. It's not like covering up, oh, that's okay, this happens. It's just explaining to you why there are missed rounds in gunfights. Not much else to say about this video. If you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more Monday quarterback videos. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching.